Welcome everybody, Shir number 929. We're learning today L'Refuah Shalema Leah Bas Tila Pesel, Lila Nishmas Moshe Dov B'Rabaran Zison, Lila Nishmas Blima Bas Rav Moshe. Getting back to our malacha of MAKEH B'PATISH. Okay, we are in the middle of talking about the various different type of, noise-making instruments, what one could do, what one can't do, what one can use, what one can't use. A gezerah that one might come to fix musical instruments. Now, I just want to talk a little bit about clapping and dancing in general on Shabbos and on Yom Tov. So the question is, sometimes you see people, they're clapping backwards. Is there any ground for that? They flip their hands, and when they clap on, shall clap backwards. Sometimes by a simcha, somebody wants to dance on Shabbos. Is there a problem? Is there a problem of dancing on Shabbos? Is that part of the Isser, whereby Chazal said one might come to fix musical instruments? Okay, so basically it's a machloikis in the Shulchan Aruch between the Mechaber and the Ramah, and the Mishnah Berurah explains that the whole machloikis basically is in conjunction with dancing and clapping. It has nothing to do with using like door knockers or using bells. These type of things the Mishnah Berurah talks about in the Bir Halacha and in the Mishnah Berurah across the board. Those are usher. That's not the question. The question is clapping, dancing, and so on. And now, when it comes to the toys that make noise and so on, these type of things also, Lamaisa, how we explained it the previous shiurim, that's no machlokes, that's all straight up. So the Mechaber says like this in our Siman Shin Lamed Tes Siv Gimel, and the Mechaber is on the Machmer side, the Ramah a little bit more maker. We'll see how it works exactly. We have to explain the whole thing and have an understanding. Then we'll see where we go from there. So says the Mechaber. And we've explained this Mechaber before. He says like this: kaf al kaf. One shouldn't clap two hands together. Kaf al yarech, or the hand on the thigh. And not to dance in a musical way. What's the problem? One might come to fix a clay shir, a musical instrument. Now we spoke about also further. Says the Mechaber, even to bang on the with one fingers on the ground, not to do al luach on the table, al achas keneged achas kederecham sharim. Not to do these type of things, bang fingers together, hands together. Or the kashkesh be'egois latina kalashachek or lasachek oi boy bezug kadei sheyish takak. That's a separate thing which we spoke about, the rattle type things and the noisemaker, the toys and so on. Okay, v'chol zev chayotze bois asik zera again. Shem yisaken klei shir. A clay shear. Shemi yisaken klei shear. One might come to fix a musical instrument. Okay, so now the Mechaber ends off before we get to the Ramah. He says ulasapek kalachayad is mutter. One claps, does it backwards, backhanded, so that would be okay. So that's the bottom line as far as the Mechaber goes. To clap backhanded, he says that's fine. That's not a problem. So that's why we see people clapping backhandedly. Now, just to start off the subject a little bit, the Mishnah Berurah talks about, first of all, in Sif Ches, Sif Katan Ches, V'loy Meraktim, when he says when we say that the Mechaber holds no dancing in conjunction with those Rishonim, Achronim, and so on, that are on little bit more of the Machmer side. So he says, but when it comes to Simchas Torah, V'yoyim Simchas Torah is mutar l'raked. One is allowed to dance, even though Lefi the Mechaber will say Shabbos Yom Tov no dancing, right? So when it comes to Simchas Torah, it's like a different ballgame. That's a different league, if you want to call it. The Torah, Mishum Kavod Torah. There's the issue of Kavod Torah. We spoke about this last time, also in reference to the bells on the Torah, on the crowns, sometime that ring. And there are major poskim, the Shach and others, that major poskim will say, since it's Kavod Torah, it's a different thing. Even though not just Makkah Mitzvah, but Mamish Kavod Torah. So then certain things are okay, like we saw the bells, and same thing by dancing on Simchas Torah. Came to less bezeh ela mishum shvus avol b'shar. So then the Mishnah says, in conjunction with this Mechaber, avol b'shar simcha shel mitzvah k'goyim b'nisun afilu hachi is also lefi the Mechaber explaining. Oh, but then he ends off and he says, "V'gam l'kavod Torah, even kavod Torah, ein kedai lahater el tipuach v'rikod, only the clapping and dancing. When we talk about Simchas Torah, we're talking about clapping, dancing. Fine, that's okay. V'lei kishkush b'pamoinim v'zagim, not to start taking noisemakers. That you don't do. You'll take a graga, you'll start taking bells, and make all different type of sounds. That you can't do. Even kavod Torah, you can't do that. Kol shkein shar klei shir, the asa. You can't start taking musical instruments, even though there's no electricity involved or something like that. Start making music on Yom Tov for Simchas Torah. You say, Simchas, Simchas. You'll say kavod Torah. That far we don't know. It's only a question of clapping and dancing, which is allowed even lefi the mechaber. Okay. Now comes along the Bir Halacha, and he explains that which we say backhanded, those who clap backhanded, when we say that's allowed, even lefi the mechaber, who's more on the machmer side over here. But he says like this, the Bir Halacha explains that which a mechaber says backhanded, that's only going on clapping. Din zeh mekoirei hu Yerushalmi, that's coming from a Yerushalmi. He says, he said, but it's dafka b'sipo kalachiyad. That's only when you're clapping kalachiyad, you're clapping backwards. Mashma de v'kishkush hazug v'chayoyzeh shehu yoyzeh derech shir le'mahani af tiyase kalachiyad. In other words, if you want to start taking noisemakers, I'll spin my graga, for example, backhanded. That you can't do. I'll ring the bell backhanded. That you can't do. Now we did see in previous shiurim certain cases whereby, whatever the case is, somebody has to get into a house to do backhanded, but that's not the issue. The issue right now we're talking about whereby the mechaber said, "You're good. You could clap on Shabbos," says the mechaber, backhanded. But that clapping where it's lechatchila okay, backhanded, would not apply for all the other type of noisemakers if you do it backhanded. In certain situations, we said it would be okay, but just across the board, it's only by clapping. So that's what the Bir Halacha explains. Okay, so now comes along the Ramah, and he says that Lamaisa v'hadam ishapkim murak, those that clap, those that dance. Nowadays, there are those who clap, that dance on Shabbos and Yom Tov nowadays. Again, we're not talking about Simchas Torah. We established that's not the issue. So he says, leave them. We're not going to be moicha. We're not going to tell they have to stop. Mishum demutav sheyushoygim v'aliyum izeidim. That's a klal in halacha, which we're not going to get into right now. Better that they do it by mistake, they don't do it on purpose. Okay, we're not going to talk about that right now too much. I just want to establish the second fact, which the Ramah, and then we'll get into it the next year a little more. But he brings down paskening like Tosfos. There's a Tosfos that says that lamaisa today the whole thing doesn't really apply. Meaning what? Meaning that in general, just because I'm going to clap, I'm not going to go ahead and fix a musical instrument. Now, I do want to say before we end this year, because we'll talk about it next year, that the Mishnah Berurah says this whole thing again, even where we're makel, like the Ramah, where Tosfos says the gezerah doesn't apply. Well, we have to see the different shitas, the achronim from nowadays, how they work with it. But he says Lamai said it's only when we're dealing with with the clapping and the dancing. But when it comes again to these bell makers, door knockers, and these type of things, or noise making toys, these things, that's everything stays across the board. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about clapping, dancing in general. So that's what he says. That it would all be okay, meaning the clapping and the day. Why? Because today we're not professionals. We're not real professionals in reference to fixing these type of musical instruments, and therefore therefore there would not be. There's no gezer. The mill said it's not. We won't come to fix a musical instrument. So he says it could be, says Ramah, in conjunction with that Tosfos, it could be that's why people are more makel today. Okay, so we're going to continue next time, Be'ezras Hashem, and see the various different ways how to work with the clapping and the dancing on Shabbos and on Yom Tov. Thank you for listening. Atzlach and bracha, kol tov.